Call this public meeting portion of the agenda to order. This is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. I'll call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13, as amended, respecting applications for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for Rolling Meadows subdivision phase 17 through 21. Up first, we have the applicant presentation, and I'll call on William Highcoop, I always pronounce that wrong, for a presentation respecting the applications. William, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just asked, there's the PowerPoint. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and anyone in attendance watching. Thanks for having me this evening. As noted, my name's William Highcoop. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants, and am representing the owner of the Rolling Meadows subdivision for tonight's public meeting for the proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment for the Rolling Meadows subdivision. Slide, please. Over the last term of council in late 2020 and late 2021, several application and approvals were received for updates to the Rolling Meadows subdivision that was originally approved back in 2007. The success of the market and continued ongoing demand has led to the immediate need to set up subsequent phases for the forthcoming development. The intent of these applications is to make the necessary adjustments to the remaining undeveloped land along Highway 20 and Highway 58, and then remaining draft approval lands east of the highway corridor. Slide, please. Just to provide an outline of where we are on the plan, the first 11 phases to the north have been completed, registered, and constructed. Phase 13 on the bottom left, and as well as Phase 15, were previously approved and home construction is underway. Phase 14 is nearing registration and is expected to be completed in the coming weeks. Phase 16 was recently registered and home construction is expected to start shortly. Consisting of the proposal tonight, we can see Phase 17 on the top right-hand corner, as well as some changes to the Village Square area in the middle of the plan at the intersection of Upper Lane and Barker Parkway. Phases 18 through 21 are proposed east or on the right-hand side of the hydro corridor, and they are proposed to be updated in a similar fashion as Phase 13, 14, 15, and 16. Slide, please. The only component of this application that relates to an OPA is as a response to the public comments and council concerns regarding the removal of commercial use from the Village Square on the last application. The owner, along with the consultant team, have had discussions with staff to address these concerns and have proposed to reintroduce the commercial spaces into the Village Square. And you can see that shown here in red on the screen. Slide, please. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications seek to implement zoning standards for the updated lotting fabric for the proposed red line revision that was submitted concurrently with these applications. Those are consistent with the zoning provisions previously approved with phases 13 through 16. The proposed residential uses and standards would allow for single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, various types of townhouses, including street, back-to-back, and block townhouses. Lastly, we are also updating the commercial zoning at the Village Square. Slide, please. So just going to keep it brief tonight, but basically following the public meeting, a report would be brought forward for council's consideration. If that approval was received, detailed design and clearance of conditions would commence, and we would be required to get approvals from the city staff, NPCA, and region on those requirements. Lastly, I understand there are registered speakers on behalf of the neighboring owner. We received applications, we have submitted applications for proposal last spring, and were recently informed by staff by the pre-consultation meeting that happened on the abutting lands late last fall. While comments were received at the 11th hour and we haven't had an appropriate time to respond, we will be reviewing with our team and staff and are confident that they can be addressed with staff moving forward. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, William, and I'll open the floor up for any questions. Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Halakuk, thank you for your presentation. Just quick question regarding part one, the commercial space. I love the idea. I've been through Rolling Meadows, and it's quite shocking to me, having gone through it so much, that there was absolutely nothing there aside from homes. So my question is, what are you considering for that commercial space?
So the secondary plan and the zoning would permit for a range of smaller retail uses. So it's intended that this Village Square commercial area be more dedicated to the surrounding neighbors and service their day-to-day needs.
And how many square feet are we talking about in this commercial space? How many different storefronts or options have you considered right now?
So on this block specifically, it could range upwards of around 50,000 square feet. Depending on the individual store size, we could see anywhere from 18 to 22 different stores.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. What about, have you considered or given any thought to having a shared communal area that ties in as well with the commercial space? Is there something available for that? I mean, to create some sort of neighborhood hub?
Certainly. Yeah, so directly across the street is an approved park area. That's actually, the servicing for phase 14 is underway, so that will be implemented actually ahead of the commercial space.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Hare. Councillor D'Angelo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, just a few questions. Just following up on the commercial activity, when will that be built? Because just if I could elaborate a little bit, I see other plans of subdivisions. A good example is in Beamsville. They actually put commercial entities in as a residential was being built, not waiting for all the residential and then building commercial. So if you could give us maybe a little bit of indication of when that's going to be happening.
Yeah, so I don't have a precise timeline on that. I know it's certainly something that we've, in the past, for previous applications, undertaken some market studies. So I think it'll be a balance of that demand in that specific, for those specific uses. I know there's also a lot of highway commercial land along Highway 20 that is also zoned and designated as commercial. Those blocks are also registered through Phase 12. So we're starting to look at some of those bigger box elements down along Highway 20, and then the smaller kind of uses within the Village Square. So unfortunately, I don't have a precise timeline for you at this point.
Okay, just to follow up. Yeah, I think it's important that that gets built sooner than later. I know they always do market studies, but a good example is Confederation Heights. There's been commercial land sitting there vacant. And the reason it sits vacant there is because the developer wants to come back later and say, well, I can't build anything here. Nobody wants anything. Let's convert it to residential. Big mistake. I know, I see Mr. Gordon in the back there. When this originally came through, there was always a village center. I don't know how it got taken out of there because I was here in 2007 when it was passed. So to me, it's very critical that it's back in there because you want to provide the amenities for the people that are living in that area so that they're not always using their vehicles to drive elsewhere. So it's very critical that this gets built sooner than later. And I look at other subdivisions. You can look at the Club Roma area. You know, there's a restaurant there. There's a corner store there. It provides those amenities. So if you could take that back and see whatever pressure you could put on to get some of these built sooner than later, it would be quite helpful for the neighboring community, and then also from the city perspective to provide those services.
No, we'll certainly take that back. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it, Councillor? Okay. Is there any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. This question might be geared to one of our planners who's here today. I'm wondering if Rolling Meadows has so many homes, semi-detached, standalone, and now we're going to be adding other various homes, but they're all single-family dwellings. Is there a possibility to put a 3-4-story apartment building? Is it zoned for that capability? And that, I guess, is the question for the planners.
Yeah, if you want me to answer it, I can.
Okay, please do.
Yeah,
sorry.
so the zoning that is actually proposed is a mixed-use zoning. So it actually would permit those commercial uses along with apartments above it, or that standalone fashion. So my mind goes to the example across on 4th Avenue across from the hospital, where you see the standalone apartment buildings and the commercial around it. A scenario like that, this zoning would allow for that, or it would allow for the residential uses to be above those commercial uses. So it gives us the opportunity, depending on how the market goes, for either of those scenarios.
Great, perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Yeah, just again, following up, that's a great suggestion. You look at, we look out the window here, we can see the lofts where they have commercial on the lower parts of the building and then residential on the top, which is a great mixed use. Get the density there and also provide the amenities. I do have a question. It may not specifically relate to this, but maybe if I can ask the question, is there land that's been set aside for the school boards in terms to developing any schools, like either a Catholic or a separate or a public school?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 2 blocks in this plan of subdivision that are dedicated for schools. Both the Catholic and public school boards have been circulated on these applications. Those block locations did move a couple years back, but they were satisfied with the rearranged block locations. And so we are consistently including those lands and setting them aside for future institutional uses.
Yeah, if I could just follow up to you, Mr. Mayor. So have those lands been purchased by the school boards, and are they planning at looking at putting schools there in the near future? And if you have any insight in that, what type of schools? Are they high schools, elementary schools, grade schools?
Unfortunately, we have not gotten any indication that they're looking to move forward in the short term. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we did move a block a couple years back. But yeah, from what we haven't heard anything that they're willing to purchase them at this point. So that's something that we're just setting aside at this point.
Okay. If just a question relating to that, if you have, I know you have to put it aside from a planning perspective. If they do not choose to move forward with the purchasing of that land, is that something the city can purchase, or does it go straight back to the developer? Is there an order in which the land will get disposed of if the school boards say they find no need to put a school there?
You could conceivably come to such an arrangement with the owner, but that would be a little bit untraditional. If the school boards usually come and say those blocks aren't necessary, we would make alternative arrangements. Of course, those arrangements would have to come back to council for approval and go through the necessary rezoning process.
Thanks for answering the additional questions. Very helpful, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, William, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I'll move on next to registered speakers. So are all 3 on? And we're going to do them separate, or is this a joint presentation? Okay, I'll call on Emma West, Phil Busby, and David Milano to speak on the application. Please provide your full name and address for public record. Please note you have 5 minutes to address council. So please state your name and address, please. I'll start with Emma.
Good evening. I'm Emma West. I'm a partner at Bousfields Inc., and my address is 3 Church Street in Toronto.
Thank you. And next, Phil, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Phil Busby. I'm a director of development with Parkridge, the adjacent landowner to the east. And my address is 70 Huron Street, Collingwood, Ontario.
Thank you. And David.
Thanks. Yep, I'm David Milano. I'm a senior planner with Bousfields and a colleague of Emma's. And my address, same as Emma's, is 3 Church Street in Toronto.
Thank you. And who's going to lead this presentation, or are we doing them separate? Go ahead.
No, I'll be leading the presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I thank Emma and Phil for making their introductions. I'll just ask as well, I think I have sharing capabilities. I just want to make sure that I can. It looks like I can. Great. So good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As I mentioned, my name is David Milano. I'm a senior planner with Bousfields Inc., and we're the planning consultant to Parkbridge Lifestyle Communities, the owner of the lands. And I'll just pull up a couple graphics here. So on the screen here is just an aerial of the Rolling Meadows area with a few lands identified. So Parkbridge owns approximately 55 hectares of lands in the Rolling Meadows secondary plan. That's the area identified in the light blue line there. And it includes an approved draft plan for 328 residential units, which is the Uppers Grove approved draft plan. Parkbridge also intends to submit a development application for the remaining lands as well in the near future. And so we've had the chance to review some of the application materials that have been provided, and we wanted to highlight a couple comments and concerns that we have with the proposed application as it is today. And we understand that tonight there's a rezoning and official plan amendment application with respect to lands in the phase 7, or sorry, with respect to lands in the phase 17 area, which is the area identified in red. And we understand that the rezoning application would increase the residential units in this area, and it would ultimately relocate a proposed stormwater management pond. And so now we understand that the stormwater management pond relocation is the subject of a draft plan red line revision. However, the rezoning application as well clearly proposes that residential uses where the current stormwater management pond is currently planned. And so the effect of the rezoning application would be to, again, increase the amount of units in this area where a swim pond is currently planned, and ultimately relocate that stormwater management pond to the a little bit further east. And so that's what these two graphics here are illustrating. The image on the left shows the current stormwater management pond location as per the draft plan, the most recently redline revised draft plan, the swim pond location shown in the outline in purple, and which is completely within the phase 17 lands. And then as part of the application materials for the application tonight, a stormwater management brief is included, which shows a relocated and redesigned stormwater management pond, as you can see here, again on the right side in the purple outline, which shows an ultimate stormwater management pond location that is both within the phase 17 lands and within the Parkbridge lands. And so ultimately, the application would be to relocate that swim pond to be partially built on Parkbridge's lands. And this is where we have a few concerns that we wanted to highlight with this proposal. Namely that our client has not been consulted regarding the swim pond redesign or relocation, and clearly it would impact the future development of their lands. Based on the original stormwater management plan, Parkbridge's lands were not planned to accommodate a new stormwater management pond. And so we would ask that council that council should not approve an application which has an effect to relocate or redesign this stormwater management pond until our client has been engaged and consulted, as it would affect obviously development of their lands. And I just want to emphasize to this point as well that that a stormwater management pond is obviously an important piece of community infrastructure that really ties together, really applies to a much larger area than just one particular parcel. And so it has implications to the wider community and not just the lands on which it's located. And to that point, for example, relocating as proposed, the relocated swim pond is within the Hydro 1 transmission corridor, which runs north and south on the east side of the phase 17 lands, and just on the west side of the Parkbridge land. So it runs north and south all the way through the Rolling Meadows subdivision. And so we understand from our experience in other projects that having infrastructure in a transmission corridor is generally restricted by Hydro 1 for various reasons, grading, and other reasons. And so we would emphasize that Hydro 1 as well should be an important piece of this puzzle, and should be consulted and have an active role at the table with this proposal. Another potential impact from this relocation, storm pond relocation, is the within the Rolling Meadows secondary plan land use schedule, which I'll just pull up here, shows a multi-use trail within that same length of the Hydro 1 corridor. So that's the dashed brown line going in a north-south fashion here, partially within those phase 17 lands. So that's a proposed multi-use trail. And so locating that stormwater management pond would disrupt that path. And as you can see, it's a key pedestrian and cyclist connection that would connect to multiple other multi-use trails through and around the perimeter of the larger Rolling Meadows community. And so we wanted to highlight that potential disruption to the trail network, as it would cut off that key connection to a trail spine. And finally, we'll ask council to direct staff to provide the full application materials to Parkbridge, because it's clear that the infrastructure that's currently being planned and that's being contemplated in the application will affect, or would propose to affect, their lands and the future development of the Rolling Meadows community. And so it's incredibly important for council and staff to ensure that development of these lands is coordinated. And what I mean by that is including coordination of the roads, infrastructure, and other items, such as confirming servicing capacity. And again, I'll just lastly want to emphasize the importance of the stormwater management pond and its piece in the larger community, the Rolling Meadows plan. And so planning it or redesigning it or relocating it just takes a lot of analysis, and a significant redesign such as this should consult the affected landowners, Parkbridge in this case. And so with that, I'll wrap up my comments, but I'd be happy to clarify anything further if there are any questions. And we do look forward to working with the city in the future development of the rest of the Rolling Meadows secondary plan. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So now I'll open the floor up for questions to Emma, Phil, or David. There are questions from the floor here. Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is for David. I just want to ask, currently on your property, the Parkbridge Lands area, there is no stormwater management pond? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
But
Well, and just to add to that, in the secondary plan, which had a holistic look at how stormwater would be dealt with in the broader area, it was planned to be located on the applicant's lands. And so that was a big picture look at where the appropriate location for the storm pond would be at that time.
Okay, so you don't want to share the stormwater pond, is my interpretation of what you're presenting here this evening. But do you have
That's not necessarily the case. We haven't been able to be engaged in the process. That's our big concern. So okay. We want to be engaged in the process. Parkbridge has actually attempted to reach out to the owner since they've acquired the lands and haven't had a response back. And so our big message tonight is, if this is the most appropriate thing for the broader community, we think that Parkbridge needs to be engaged in that discussion before any decisions are made.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And if I could just add to that point too, I think another just relevant discussion point here is that development of these lands, the Parkbridge lands and the current lands, will be subject to a cost sharing agreement that looks at all of these items as well. And to Emma's point, just to follow up, that Parkbridge had made attempts to make contact and has not been successful in getting that ball rolling. So,
thank you. Is there any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of having some engagement in terms of discussion of where this storm water management pond is going, what are your timelines to look at that? Are you looking like it takes a couple months for you to develop, once you have some discussions with the owner or the proponent, what are you looking for timelines in terms of having a bit of discussion to come up with maybe a comprehensive plan or something that's agreeable by all parties?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So typically we would want, obviously, the materials to review, some ample time to review the materials holistically with our internal development team, and then opportunity to consult with the applicant. And that could obviously range in terms of how long that might take, but usually, I mean, if we're talking about a timeline to review and to come up with a new plan, that's usually in the range of weeks, or could lead into months, depending on, again, how easy it is to connect and to get the materials that are required, and then to kind of reach to a common approach that makes the most sense for both parties to come to that solution. So I think our timeline in terms of having that consultation and engagement is at the forefront. It's right in front of us now. We want to get that going, but it will take some time, obviously, to review and then to have those meetings with the applicant and come up with a solution that is the best approach for the community going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, are there any, is there anyone online? Does staff have anything to say at this time? No? Okay. I want to thank Emma, Phil, and David for your presentation, and thank you for coming to council this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, DS 12, 2023, Combined Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendments for Rolling Meadows, Phase 17 to 21, Block 1239. Item DS 12, 2023 is on the agenda for information purposes to the public and to provide members of council and members with an opportunity to question staff. Are there any questions on the information report? Are there any questions for staff? There are no questions for staff. Adjournment of the public meeting. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 pursuant to Section 34. The public meeting portion of this application